Good evening and welcome to the Away Fan Shows. Bit of technical issues there. Of course it is. Wednesday night. Got a great recording for you there. We've got Natalie Sawyer, former Sky Sports, currently working on Talk Sport, as we build up to our first Premier League game of the season on Sunday at 2 o'clock against Brentford. She's a massive Brentford fan. We've got lots to talk about. Is it going to be a case of the second season syndrome for Brentford this year, or will they push on and get hard up the table? Let's add Natalie in now. Evening,
Hello.
Natalie. You're right.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thank you.
Good.
Let's start. I mean, last season was a good season for your first time in the top flight. You finished 14th in the league. You played 38, won 13, drawn 7, lost 18. A goal difference of -8 with 46 points. You were 11th in goals scored with 48, and you were 9th for goals conceded with 56. So not bad in the middle for both of them. What's good for you? What did you make of your first season in the top flight of the again?
I think it surpassed all our expectations, really. I would have been happy with just 17th, but to have gone into our last game of the season against Leeds, knowing that actually we could have finished in the top 10, now that would have meant that we'd have to have won and results go our way. But to even be in that position just goes to show, I think, what a cracking season we had. So I absolutely enjoyed the ride. A lot more defeats than we've experienced of late, let's say, when we were in the Championship and doing pretty well. But there were some really, really strong performances in that season. So many memorable ones as well, like the Liverpool 3-all, obviously Arsenal 2-0 at home kicking off the season. And you can't forget the Chelsea 4-1 victory at Stamford Bridge. So much joy to take out of that season for Brentford fans, I think.
Yeah, as I say, 14th in league. It looked a bit ominous at one point, the run of games where you weren't getting any wins. And then in came a Dane, as we were just talking about beforehand. Not the Dane we with Leicester fans will be talking about, that the Dane that really turned your season on its head. Big signing. Christian Eriksen joined Brentford after what had happened in Italy and being told he couldn't play with a pacemaker or indeed it wouldn't work. What
Yeah.
was your take on the scenario? What was your take of his impact that he had on that squad of players?
I think when you're signing any player of that sort of stature, it was a massive uplift for everybody. Uplift for the players, no doubt. Uplift for the fans, for the club. I mean, I think we had record shirt sales. Suddenly, we were selling shirts for fun. It was just, it was still unbelievable that we signed him, because nowhere in my wildest dreams did I ever think Christian Eriksen would be wearing the red and white of Brentford. So for him to come in and make the impact that he had, it was brilliant, obviously. And you're right to mention that it made such a positive impact for us. What we, as Brentford fans, like to always say as well is we did have a few injuries, and their return was sort of timed with Christian Eriksen signing. So I don't like to suggest that he's the only reason that we managed to stay up, because David Raya was a big miss for us. He missed a chunk of the
Oh,
season. Ivan Toney also had been injured for a little bit. So for those two to come back, plus Christian Eriksen in the team, it was just a massive bonus for us. And I think that's why we ended, obviously, the season so strongly. So, yeah, it was wonderful to have him, as I say, at Brentford for the short while. And good luck to him going forward, because at the end of the day, it's a feel-good story that he's back in football.
oh, massive feel-good factor. Massive feel-good factor. You looked at last season, you mentioned him, Ivan Toney, your top goal scorer with 12 goals in the Premier League. That's still some going on
Yeah.
your first season in top flight. Obviously,
Yeah.
rejected by Newcastle, came down to you boys, and he's worked his way back up, and he's shown the Premier League that if you give him a bit of space, he will score goals. How do you feel he did in his first season in the Premier League?
I think he did really well, actually. Like you say, 12 goals. I think that's a pretty decent return. Now, if you look back to the season before, he had broken the championship record for goals scored. Now, I know that's now since been surpassed by Alexander Mitrovic, but no one's expecting him to then come into the Premier League and score 20 plus goals. It's just unheard of, really, that a player can do that. So for him to get into double figures, as you say, 12 goals, I think is a pretty decent return for his first full season in the Premier League. And just before Christian Eriksen joined us, if you'd been watching Brentford, you would have seen that he was dropping a lot deeper, because he was trying to start off the attacks a
Yeah.
lot, trying to feed the ball to Brian and Burmo, for example, just to get things going. So with the with Eriksen coming into the side, it meant he could push up and stay in that sort of traditional number 9 role. So hopefully going forward to this season, he can also remain in that number 9 role and not have to drop deep and be a bit of a playmaker like he was trying to be. But what I will quickly say about him as well is there's so much more to his game than just goals. Obviously, when you talk about strikers, you just think, oh, it's just goals. And, you know, some people might think 12's not great, but like I was saying, I thought that was a pretty decent return. So much more that he does, like I mentioned, drop deep when he had to, but also defends from the front. Set pieces, always one of the first to the ball if we're having to defend a set piece. So I think I really rate Ivan Toney. I think he's been a great buy for us. And I think he did pretty well in that first season as well.
Thomas Franks, first season in the Premier League, always tough to come up as a manager and pitch your wits against the big boys. As you say, you got some cracking results, 3-3 versus Liverpool. You probably feel hard done by that you lost to Leicester twice in the season, 2-1 both times, because the first game at your ground, what can I say, you battered us. You absolutely battered us the whole game near enough. And bar a wonder strike from Yuri Tillemans and a breakaway goal from Daka to Maddison to make it 2-1. You boys probably felt done by in that game, in that first game. To then come back to the King Power and get done again by a wonder strike from Cassagna, who never scores wonder goals. He scored a couple of headers for us, but we've never seen him put one in the top corner. And then Maddison picks off again with another wonder, a free kick into the top corner. It probably felt like Groundhog Day in that you get the goal back, and again you were the better team second half and pushed on. The 2 games last year, where do you think Brentford lost them in the end? As in, do you think it was just unlucky, or do you think they tactically there's something that Thomas Frank could have changed maybe to try and give Leicester a bit more to think about?
It's weird, isn't it? When I think of those Leicester games, you're exactly right that how we didn't get something out of those games, I don't know, and they're the 2 that, well, certainly the one at Brentford. I wasn't at the Leicester game, but at the Brentford game, I certainly was like, I do not understand how we've lost that game. At least I thought we'd deserved a point. I think actually, you kind of mentioned it already. It was kind of wonder strikes. It was those kind of moments which we had in many games. We just weren't clinical enough. Whereas, you know, you just mentioned it there. You scored 2 goals and we only scored 1. So that was the difference. Ultimately, we had, you know, I remember the Chelsea game at home where Ben Chilwell afterwards was interviewed, and he said it was like hell out there, because it was like the Alamo. We were just going for Chelsea and we just could not get past Edward Mendy, and ultimately that was the difference. And I suppose you could say that was the difference as well in those 2 Leicester games, that we just could not put the ball in the back of the net to guarantee something out of that game. So you know, I'm pretty sure Thomas Frank, who I absolutely love, may I say, I am sure he'll have learned from that first season in the Premier League. And I don't necessarily think there was much he could do really to change that game. It was, as I say, at the end of the day, just not being able to put the ball in the back of the net, which was the difference between the 2 sides.
You talk about last season and Thomas Frank. What do you think he's learnt from his first season in the Premier League? Do you think he's learnt that because you've got a very structured side, and by the sound of it, it's the first you've brought back a academy into your club as well, because you didn't have the academy. You had your set way of doing things. You had a formula. You went by stats and everything like that to get your players in. You've gone back to the old way of having an academy to try and bring people through. Is this something that Thomas Frank suddenly thought, I've got to have something there to look at, or is this the club's choices, or has he just realised in the Premier League you've got to have an academy there to bring players through?
I think it's the latter. I think it's just that sort of timing. We did have an academy, and we had to disband it in the end because, you know, when you're a club as we were in League One, in the Championship, you often found any player that was a real quality was just poached by opposition that higher up in the league. So it didn't benefit us in any way, unfortunately, that to have an academy. Now, with also Brexit and the fact that it makes it more difficult to buy in certain players from certain countries, it's the foresight, really. You've got to start looking ahead and nurturing players and hope that you can find, you know, for example, like the next Syed Benrahma for us, but from an academy perspective, for example, or an Otley Watkins or whoever it is, you know. So I think the academy was just a case of a needs must now, really.
Yeah, I'd say going back to Thomas Frank, do you think he's learnt going into the second season, what he needs to do differently to win games, or do you think it'll be he's very structured from what I've seen? He likes his team to play set ways. He doesn't really diverse. He's got a set way of playing, and if it doesn't work, we'll just keep playing that way. Do you think he'll learn that this year, like a bit like Brendan has, that sometimes you have got to change it up? And he worked at Liverpool. He had to change it when he came to Leicester again. First 2 seasons it worked. Last couple of seasons it hasn't worked as well, and he's now realised this pre-season he's got to change how we are playing. Do you think Thomas Frank will realise going into his second full season in the Premier League that teams work you out quicker than they would in the Championship?
Oh, absolutely. I think as well that our first season in the Premier League, for a lot of teams, we were probably an unknown. We did have momentum coming into that season, having won the playoffs. This season, we're not a surprise anymore. So people will know who's in our team. They'll know kind of how we play. I'm pretty sure that there'll be tinkering of systems. We might have 3 at the back, we might have 4 at the back. There'll be a bit of a difference. We'll see that, I think, throughout the season. But I think that's just inevitable. You've got to evolve. We can't rely on what we achieved last season to cement our place this season going forward in the Premier League. So I'm pretty sure that Thomas Frank will have done a lot more homework. I say a lot more. I mean, goodness me, I'm sure he does his meticulous homework all the time, but he'll definitely have looked into how we make sure we don't suffer a second season syndrome, as we all know people like to talk about.
I was going to say, we as Leicester fans, we'll talk about the second season syndrome because we won the Premier League through it. But you can always hope. They live in the thing that this can happen. Obviously, going into this season, a few changes. Obviously, your main creator for the latter of the season, Christian, is now left, and obviously that's big boots to fill. You don't have a player of that quality. Obviously, you've signed Ben Mee on a free. I think great bit of business for you, very experienced. And then, as we were talking about before, you find Kane Lewis-Potter, a player that I was looking at, a player that a lot of Leicester fans have been talking about in the Championship from Hull City. What do you make of your transfer business so far in the window? I think there's another player you've signed as well. You've signed 3, I think, in total.
Yeah, well, 4 actually. We've signed a goalkeeper as well. We also signed Aaron Hickey, who would traditionally be a left back more by trade, but can play as a right back, and that's what he'll be doing for us. Because actually, all of last season we didn't have a right back. We had Sergi Canos for the most part playing as a right wing back, and he's not a defensive mindset player. He's a midfielder by trade. So I felt a bit sorry for him, really, because he got a bit of negativity from some fans. But you have to sometimes sit back and think, he's being asked to do something that isn't actually in his makeup. That wasn't what he was trained to do as a player. So to bring in Aaron Hickey is brilliant, a player that we've been looking at for quite a while. So that's great. You mentioned Lewis-Potter, again, another player that we've been eyeing up for a while. I think we even tried to get him in January, but Hull didn't want to sell him then. So what I like about Brentford is we have our targets in mind, and we tend to stick at it and go for it and eventually get them in, which is great. And as you say, Ben Mee, wow, what experience he's going to bring to that defence, which I actually think in the main did all right. Yes, we conceded more goals, but that's to be expected, when you're coming up into the Premier League. But I actually felt we did pretty well. Ethan Pinnock thought was fantastic. Pontus Jansson the same. Christopher Ayer. There was a lot of positives about the Brentford defence, but I think when you're bringing in someone of that quality of Ben Mee, I think it's just a plus point, really. So I'm delighted with what we've done so far. And there's talk about Mikkel Damsgaard coming in as well from Sampdoria. He can be a bit of a creative spark. And you mentioned there about Christian Eriksen. Of course, it's a big blow that he's not going to be with us. And we all had our fingers crossed that he'd sort of fallen in love and kind of would stick it out with us because it was just the right thing to do, let's say. But we actually have a player called Josh Da Silva who didn't get to play that much last season, unfortunately, due to injury, but came back right at the end. And he is a driving, attacking midfielder. And I'm really hopeful that he'll get a good season in the Premier League. And we'll see. He's not obviously the same as Christian Eriksen, but I feel like he could be the person that can just thread those passes to Ivan Toney, hopefully, that, can spark something. So, yeah, there's still lots to be positive about Brentford, even though Christian Eriksen isn't there.
Going into the game on Sunday, a couple of players talking about your goalkeeper, Reina. what a player. Leicester's been linked with him at times recently. Obviously, now Kasper has decided to leave after 11 years. Links and names will start going around very quickly. But obviously, Leicester haven't got a lot of money to spend, so I can't see him coming in. How vital is he to you? Because obviously he got injured against Leicester last season and he played the game and then after that disappeared for 3 months with a nasty injury.
It's a strange one, that, because in that game did not notice any issues, and so for him to then have got injured and be out, as you say, for a number of months, it was a massive blow and unfortunate, really, because the goalkeeper that came in, Alvaro Fernandez, it took him a while to sort of learn to play the Brentford way, if you like, and what was really, I think, important is the back line that we had, bar Christopher Ajer, was the same pretty much back line that we'd had in the Championship. So they have that relationship where they trust each other, they know exactly what to do and all that sort of stuff as a team. And there's Fernandez, bless him, having to come in suddenly, and it just took him a bit of time to learn the way of how his teammates wanted him to play out from the back, etc., etc. But Raya was a massive miss because so much of our attack starts from him. He's some of his deliveries and some of the way he can pick out players with his ball, the way he can, ping a crossover to a player. He's just brilliant, and I'm not surprised you've been linked with him. I'm actually in a way chuffed that we've still got him, and I hope we can still hold on to him because he is a fantastic player and a big miss for us when he wasn't in the team. Like I say, I mean, the way he can just pick out a player like Ivan Toney running down the wing or whatever it is, or Rico Henry, I should say, or someone. He's just fantastic for us, and he'd be a big miss for us if we lost him. So yeah, delighted that he's in the starting lineup. I'm a little bit delighted that Kasper Schmeichel isn't.
Obviously, that's going to be an interesting situation on Saturday. We're talking about first time 11 years, not to his name in the team sheet. It's going to be a strange one. You've just mentioned about another player I was going to talk about was Henry, someone that I'd seen play quite a bit watching you come up through the Championship. He took the Premier League by storm on that left-hand side. He looked a real threat defensively, but also going forward, he could do a job. We saw the goal away at Everton. He's cracking strike. So is he another player that do you think he'll push on now in the second season?
Oh, definitely. He, again, brilliant players, and he's our longest serving player as well. Not in the Kasper Schmeichel ilk, of course, but still has been at Brentford for quite a while and has had his injury problems, but has now come through, and I think richly deserves his plaudits. He did brilliantly. He is like a little rocket, I would say. He's so fast, he can gap him down the wing. He's great defensively on one-on-one situations, but can bomb down that left-hand side and be a part of the attack very, very quickly. I mean, it might sound a bit controversial and a little bit biased, but I was disappointed that he didn't even get a look in for Gareth Southgate's Nations League team. When you consider, what was it, he picked five right backs, not one left back in that team. And you just thought, if ever there was an opportunity to just try out someone new, why would you not try him out? So, because I think he'd do a great job. But that's probably, as I say, a bit of bias there. So yeah, lovely. I love Rico Henry. Fantastic. And his relationship with Ivan Toney and in fact with so many of the players is brilliant. So another one who's very, very pivotal to that Brentford team. And when he's not in the team, you notice he's not there.
And the one player I was going to talk, who I was very impressed with over the two games, Nørgaard. He looks a quality midfielder for you boys. The game at the King Power, he's one of the ones that stood out in your whole team. The way he moved the ball, the way he controlled what was going on with your play. It seemed like quite a bit was coming through him at the time. Obviously, Eriksen didn't play in that game. And it just felt like everything, all your plays were coming through him. He was the one setting up the movement. Is he a vital cog in that team again this season?
Absolutely. He was the Players' Player of the Season. He was the Fans' Player of the Season. I think there was no other player in the Premier League that won more tackles than Christian Nørgaard. He just had a brilliant season. And again, is always going to be one of the first names on the team sheet. I think him and Thomas, I think he's the teacher's pet. I think I gathered that from what other players say. So he's always going to be, not just because he's teacher's pet, but he's always going to be in that first 11 because he is just so formidable. And as you say, he plays in that sort of defensive midfield role, but but really just start things off. So he'll turn over the ball as quick as he can, and then ping it to just get things going again for Brentford to counter and go on the attack. So yeah, another player that has just taken to the Premier League really, really well. There aren't many players in that Brentford side that we were wholly, it sounds awful to say it, wholly disappointed with, because, you know, to have had the season that we had, I think we could all go into the summer thinking, wow, what a season we've had. All those players did us proud. And yeah, so Nørgaard is definitely up there as a player that he's got to be in the first 11.
So serious question time. Where do you think Brentford will finish this season?
What a question. I mean, I've seen a lot of predictions where everyone has gone for it's second season syndrome. We're not gonna survive. Again, I mean, it sounds so boring to say it, but you know, if we finish 17th, I'd be absolutely delighted. But I know what Brentford are like. I mean, it sounds stupid to say it because every team wants to stay in the Premier League, but I know the ambition of the board and of the owner. That we're not here just for, you know, a little fleeting visit. We're here to try and cement our place in the Premier League, and our owner has ambitions of maybe not doing a Leicester and winning the Premier League, but doing a Leicester and as in trying to compete for those European places. So as I say, I'd be happy with 17th, but even just finishing around the same sort of mark that we achieved last time, I think would be another successful season for us. And then you slowly start to build that hopeful momentum of taking you forward, going further up. Anything higher than that, I think I would just be grinning from ear to ear for months on end, because it would just be a fantastic season. To break into the top half would just be stupid, wouldn't it, really? But it would be a dream to do that. But as I say, I'd just be happy to be sort of middle of the road, let's say, between, I don't know, 12th and 15th, I'd be very happy with. But 17th is the minimum, obviously.
And the all-important question, your prediction for Sunday's game.
Oh, I was asked this yesterday, and I kind of just said, look, if we can play how we played in those two games where I felt we were unlucky to not get anything out of it, but be more clinical, then there's no reason why we can't come away with a win in this one. And you know, I'm intrigued to see how Leicester are going to cope without Kasper Schmeichel in there. I'm just, yeah, my biggest issue is James Maddison. He's a bit of a pain, isn't he? So I didn't enjoy watching him at Brentford. He got a lot of stick from the fans, but then he got he ended up getting that goal.
Always the case.
Oh, geez. I mean, I was there at one stage thinking, if you just stayed on your feet, you might actually get an England call-up. But, you know, that was my little gripe with him. James Maddison is a player that we're going to have to stop, because I'm sure he's coming into this season with full of confidence after how he finished last season. Presumably Jamie Vardy is fit and
you
see, that's a pain as well. So there's a few issues to tackle when it comes to Leicester. But what do I think will happen? I'm going to say it. I'm going to say we're going to turn it around. We're going to beat you this time. So we're going to win 2-1.
Hey, there's not many fans who haven't come on here and called Jamie Vardy a pain or a pest over the years, is there really? Hey,
he's jealous because he's so brilliant for you. So, yeah, that's what I'm going to be there, though. I'm going to be at the Leicester game.
Oh, yeah. Oh, brilliant.
I can't wait.
Obviously, now at TalkSport, busy month ahead, is it, with the transfer window? And obviously, it's been quiet so far, I've said, over the last few weeks this year. This transfer window has been quiet. I think a lot has to do with the COVID situations, and club haven't fully recovered financially from it. I think Leicester are proof of that. The King Power being, you know, duty free and all that, and airports being shut for 2.5 years. It's hit the club hard, and we haven't got the finances to go and splash the cash at the moment. And as we're seeing, we've been linked with a lot of players leaving the club and to go away. But obviously, the owner's very strict with what they sell. Do you see, going into the next month or so, not just Leicester, but in general, do you think there'll be a free throwing of transfers, or do you think it'll be a quieter one this year? Because generally, I think clubs have struggled with finances over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I sort of though think that there's still going to be money to spend. I'm not saying with Leicester, but just in general, because there are a few issues that still need to be resolved. Obviously, Manchester United are still trying to work out, is Cristiano Ronaldo going to stay or is he going to go? There's that Frankie de Jong situation as well with Manchester United. Chelsea are now throwing their name into the hat as well with trying to lure de Jong. I think the problem that you find is that when Man City and Liverpool do their business as early as they do, it kind of sparks everybody else thinking, oh my goodness, they're strengthening, we now have to strengthen. And now that Chelsea have a new owner, yes, they brought in obviously Sterling and Koulibaly, but they will still be looking to bring in some new personnel, I'm sure. I mean, they may stick with Kai Havertz as their number 9 option, but you know, they might want to look at a number 9 option. The problem is I don't know where you go for a number 9 these days, because I think every club's trying to find a striker. So I still think there is a bit of money that's going to be thrown around this summer, because I just think there's still a bit more for other clubs to do. But you look at other clubs, I mean, Nottingham Forest, what is it, 11, 12 players they brought in? They've spent a fortune. So there's still a lot of money that's been spent, and I think there's a little bit more that we'll see right when we build up to the end of the transfer window.
Natalie, as always, thank you for coming on Leicester Fan TV. I know Jamie loves getting you on here. He says it's great banter. Tonight's been awesome. Thank you so much. Good luck to Brentford after the weekend, as always.
Yeah.
Enjoy the King Power. I hope you do. And hopefully we can catch up soon and see what your experience was of the King Power.
Fantastic. Love to.
Thanks, Natalie. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. And there we go. Another away fan show. Natalie Sawyer, we try and keep the big names, to come in for you. What a nice treat that was tonight. Thanks for joining us. As always, keep it Leicester Fan TV. Catch me next week, same time, for another away fan show as we build it to Arsenal. Another tough game in the Premier League, and hopefully Leicester sign some players by this point. But you never know, being a Leicester fan now. Keep it all Leicester Fan TV.